Yeah, briefly, I've been an entrepreneur for my first 10 years, so doing artificial intelligence companies which I sold to different players in the industry. And after my 10 years as an entrepreneur, I started as a venture capitalist because I was short of good ideas. And for 10 years, I ended up being an investor in a firm in France called Sofinova. And then I started Jolt because I wanted to scale much larger companies, so move from venture, which is much more difficult, slow in terms of time from investment to exit, to a more vibrant thing, and where we would create companies which are much bigger. So I started Jolt in order to invest in deep tech companies, growth, and across the entire Europe. That's an excellent one. So, what changed a lot is that we have more noise, so that's a negative. And I think there are many investors who are trying to go all over the place, especially in the early stage. And so that's a negative. Another negative, because I will end with the positives. The second negative is that I think there is a lot of money to do mistakes and to kind of perpetuate those mistakes. So it's again creating a lot of noise on the market. So that goes along with a very positive now. There is enough money to fund companies which are early stage. We are now kind of understanding that going after only digital services and internet is not enough. So there is a very interesting trend now where people figured out that we need again to think about technology, intellectual property, patents, and finance, actual real business grounded in science, and not only because we found it fancy and so on, because those companies have a defensible base, so it's very difficult to compete with, since if they have an original IP, they control their fate. So I think that we saw a very big evolution towards venture, who were very scientific centric at the very beginning, to suddenly very digital and B2C, and now we are going back, probably for a part at least of those investors, to something which is more B2B and IP intensive, which is probably a very good news. When I started Jolt, and it's something I remember it's a warm way of starting Jolt. I was in the very first tech tours and meetings in Portugal. That was just at the straight beginning of Jolt. And I remember, because when you start an investment fund, somewhere nobody wants to talk to you anymore because they wait for you to be much bigger. So now everybody wants to talk with us, and we love that, of course. But at that time, William and Tech2 had been extremely helpful at inviting us and positioning us and brainstorming with us, and I will be always thankful for that. I think that for those who are well established, some will try to weather the storm, so will try to use the storm. And right now, the biggest opportunities are not to follow the trends or the fashions. That's when you see a fashion, it's too late. What we see now is that we have basic needs where Europe needs to rebuild what disappeared by lack of understanding, lack of piloting of the continent. But clearly now we lack independence in many domains, and repairing that is something we can contribute to do. So this is a place where we have so many opportunities. So of course climate change is a big trend, but fixing a part of our bargaining power regarding semiconductor, bargaining power on consumer electronics, on automotive, on energy management and so on, we need to be playing there. We have weaknesses, and our technology and scaling technologies is our strength. So that's a strength we need to build companies on. I think the future is bright. No, I think that we have a future as a pan-European market. So I'm a convinced European, and I'm also a terrified European, because you see things getting fragmented again, and you know what it means. When things are getting fragmented in Europe, usually it ends up in wars. But I'm a convinced European, because I think we can have pan-European, large, wide investors investing significant amounts of money in companies which are going to scale. That's exactly what I'm trying to do with Jolt. Instead of focusing on one country and be able to deploy 10, 20 million per company in one given country, we are European-wide, which allows us to have much bigger funds and to deploy 50 million very soon, I hope 100 million per company, and create actual, not unicorns, because that's a magic animal, I don't do magic, but real large companies, so real champions, which are going to stay grounded in Europe with hundreds of employees and hundreds of millions of revenue. I would advise them to not listen at anybody, so be very careful who you listen. It's easy to tell, but typically don't listen at people who did nothing. So I want, just being a little bit nasty, you know, consultants talk a lot, and I saw recently people publishing, you know, things telling that metaverse is a 5 trillion business. You know, what the hell? Where are those 5 trillions coming from? So don't listen at those guys. Look at what is your common sense. Be simple, and don't believe also about the things like, you know, doing a mistake or a failure is building you. Failures are tough and they don't build you. Successes are building you, because you go from A to Z, you don't stop in the middle. So again, common sense. Be successful, small successes. Define your success as something which is a smaller goal, but gets there. And so don't try to be a hero. Try to succeed at what you have as a clear objective, and not too high, but succeed at something. That's one. The second thing is, when you go after a business, just look first at the market. Don't look at your technology, don't look at your people. You know, when people are not okay, you replace them, but at a market, you cannot replace it. So you position on the market. This is the only thing you cannot change, really. So first thing first, market. Second thing, don't listen at anybody. Pick the brains of the right people, those who did something in their life. I wish that, of course, like everybody said, that Tech Tour should be there 20 years from now, long after I retired. And no, I hope it's going to be a nice celebration with all the friends, which I'm already met in the corridors here. It was a kind of a pleasure to meet so many people we know. And you know, I hope it's going to be the major place where people do meet and discuss. Europe is too wide, so we don't have a European Starbucks coffee where everybody meets. You know, when you go in the Bay Area, you stop at the Starbucks in Palo Alto and you see 10 people you know. Here it's not happening. So Tech Tour is the Starbucks of Europe.